Geeks on Earth. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
And Vince, today's question comes from I Reel in the Film. We're going to do an expanded discussion about something that we briefly touched on that he brought up for one of the Q&As. And so the question is, do fans expect too much from comic book movies? With some major comic book movies about to come out, with Avengers coming out here in just a couple weeks, I thought that now would be the time to go ahead and talk about this, because I think that this is super relevant to some stuff that's going on right now. So, 10 minutes on the clock. Vince, start us off, buddy.
I do think people expect too much. I mean, I think that people have this, especially with the idea that live-action movies are coming out more frequently, and more of them are related to, well, let me rephrase that. That more live-action comic book movies are coming out. People are like, oh, they should do this and this and this and this and this, and then they get this idealized version of what that movie should be, and then they go to the movie theater and they get disappointed because it wasn't that. Like, well, I'm sorry that Blade wasn't exactly the way that it was in the comics, but the comics were lame prior to the movie. So, like, why do you care? Like, I'm sorry that Wanted wasn't the way that you wanted it to be, but it wasn't good initially. I said it.
Well, you brought up a whole bunch of great points right at the beginning there, and the biggest one of those that you touched on right at the end is all about source material versus good filmmaking. And of course, we talk about this a lot, and I'm beating a dead horse like I always do. But that is inherent to this question, right? It's can you get your head out of the movie you wrote that didn't get made because, after all, you're not the filmmakers.
Yeah.
You know, can you get your head out of that, and can you objectively look at something, or at least as objectively as possible? It's not possible to completely objectively look at something that's based on something you enjoy. Not possible. You can't completely do it, but you can do it on a level. You know what I mean? Well, what I mean is, you can't, and my point, what I'm saying with that is, you can't walk into something without expectations that you already have an investment in, okay? You are not going to go to a Hellboy movie without some kind of assumptions.
Yeah.
Not possible, right? You couldn't go into Dark Knight without some assumptions. And you actually expected it to be something much different from what you got, and you were pleasantly surprised with that one. We've talked.
This isn't proverbial. He's right. I thought it was going to be Joker the movie, and it was all going to be I am creepy and I'm the Joker, and then it turned out to be a great movie. And sheesh, I mean, advertising did so much to get people in that theater, and it did so much to deter me from going to see that movie.
Really interesting. Right?
And then I went to see it, and the advertising was just that. It was just advertising.
So do people expect too much? I think so. I think that the internet is partially to blame for this, and I always, this is another thing I say quite a bit, but I feel like what happens is we know too much going in, and so then we really have big expectations because we already think we know what it's going to be, or we think we know what we would do with the information we're given. I think we know too much about Amazing Spider-Man. I think we know too much about Dark Knight Rises, and this is coming from a director with Nolan who doesn't like to tell anybody about anything in his movies, and he's still making a big deal out of that with this. Like, you really don't know anything, but I'm like, yeah, but they put out a 6-minute prelude, like, you know, in the theater. I didn't like that. We know too much about Avengers, I think. And a lot of people, you know, somebody tweeted me this the other day where they're like, don't worry about Avengers. They haven't given us too much. A lot of people who saw the red carpet premiere said, despite all the trailers and everything, you know, it didn't even scratch the surface. But the point is, it shouldn't come close to scratching the surface. I don't think that people would have the massive expectations they have for things if too much wasn't given away in advertising.
You know, to some extent, I think that people think they're experts walking into a movie. They think, well, I know everything about this, you're not going to surprise me. And, you know, sometimes maybe they're right. I had that with Spider-Man 3. I didn't end up having such a negative experience because I sat there and watched the entire movie and checked off everything that I thought was going to happen. I'm like, problem. Oh, that was all right. Problem. And
but it wasn't because you were a Spider-Man fan and you were a Spider-Man expert. It was because it was predictable.
Yeah, I mean, it was predictable. I mean, I knew exactly what was going to happen from the moment that I saw 3 trailers. I suppose there's several moments in seeing different trailers. But, you know, after seeing all that stuff, I'm like, I know what's going to happen in that movie. They gave a lot of it away, and it's obvious some of it was going to be shoved in there. So you walk into a movie with these expectations, and I think I enjoyed Spider-Man 3 a little more because my expectations were set low. Like, if it doesn't have these problems, then maybe I'll enjoy it. But it had all those problems, so I was like, I can't be disappointed. Because, and that's the thing, is that maybe to some extent you need to have some realistic expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
sure.
You need to go into a movie knowing what you're going to go see. I mean, you're not going to go see Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and see something that's Orson Welles level. I mean, you're gonna go see a movie that has a bunch of genital and defecation jokes. That's what you're gonna get.
Right.
And if you don't like that, then you shouldn't go see Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Yeah, the difference with that, though, you're not entirely wrong. I mean, okay, here's a really good for instance for that. A lot of people complained with the... What's that?
I said Watchmen.
Here's an interesting for instance with that. You had, the first Fantastic Four movie, which a lot of people complained was too jokey and too hokey, and I guess they wanted something more serious just because it was a superhero movie. And I was like, no, guys, it's Fantastic Four. The problem with that movie is not that it's too jovial. The problem with it is that there's no story in it. It had huge problems. But the problem is not that. But it was pretty Fantastic Four in a lot of ways. I mean, it didn't. It didn't just completely go against the source material. It just wasn't a very solid film, It seems to me like a lot of comic movies, the problem, most of the time, the problem is not so much they strayed from source material, it's that it's just not good filmmaking, where like it wouldn't have been a good story no matter what it was, you know what I mean? Very rarely have I had an experience where I've gone, if only they had done exactly what the movie did, or exactly what the comics did. Now, there are exceptions to that. I thought that with Elektra, because they completely blatantly went against source material and replaced it with something far less interesting. Mm-hmm. And things like that, and I think that's when that becomes really problematic.
To some extent, I think that to some extent, I think that movie executives and creative teams try to cater too much to what the audience expects. So they expect Venom to be in this movie, or they expect that Wolverine's going to be the one that has the big connection with Phoenix, so therefore he has to be the one that saves the day.
Yeah, and they think they're giving the audience what they want, but they're not prepared to do it effectively.
I mean, I think that, and I might go so far to say this, but maybe I'm being a horrible person by saying this, I don't think that audiences are really able to voice what they want. I'm not entirely certain that they know what they want. They know that they want a good movie, but I don't think that they're going to walk out of that movie theater saying, well, they should have done this, and really wholeheartedly believe that that's what they should have done. I think that sometimes we're sort of ruled by, we as a collective human beast are ruled by our impulses and saying, well, this sounds good right now. And I don't know, maybe I'm not giving humanity enough of the benefit of the doubt.
I think that there's truth to that.
And I'm just conjecturing here. I'm not saying that's the way it is.
Well, what I find is that I tend to enjoy a film more when I can be surprised. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I try not to have too many grandiose expectations about things that I'm already familiar with, if I can help it. I made this mistake with Star Trek. I kind of wish I hadn't known as much as I did going into that movie. I don't know if I would have been more or less disappointed, but I just wish that I could have been more surprised by that film, because I feel like I did know a little bit too much going in. I mean, I've said this before. I tried not to know too much about that movie, but then I couldn't help myself. You know what I mean? Like at first I was like, no, I'm not gonna know anything, and then I was like, no, I can't help myself. But anyway, like for instance, First Class. Went into that movie and I knew like 3 things about it. I knew what actors were in it, and some of the actors that were in it, and I knew that it was set during Cuban Missile Crisis, and I knew that it was Professor X and Magneto. I didn't even really know who the other X-Men were. I had seen the trailers, but I hadn't gone off to find out who they were, and I would have to do research because I'd never heard of half those people. And my point is, I enjoyed that movie so much more than I think I would have, because it was a great movie, but I got to be surprised by everything also.
It didn't come down, for me, I didn't even know Kevin Bacon was in it until a few months beforehand, because I thought people were joking when they were telling me Kevin Bacon was going to be in an X-Men movie.
I was surprised when I first heard that too, yeah.
And then I found out who he was, and
that ultimately upped up the quality of that film, didn't it?
Kevin Bacon's a terrific actor. I don't really care what people say about Kevin Bacon, even if they still think of him as that starry-eyed kid from Footloose. No, Kevin Bacon's a great actor, and he's tasty.
And he looks fantastic for his age.
Yeah, he really does.
Let me ask you a question.
That sounded weird.
Coming up toward the end of this, what do you think? What kinds of expectations do you think fans ought to have?
I think that people should. Well, first of all, I don't think that they should expect great things from every comic book movie. With the sheer quantity that gets put out now,
that's a really good point.
You cannot expect all of these things to be X-Men First Class or X2 or to have as much of a lasting effect as Superman did or Batman '89.
I mean, I don't want to lower the bar so much to say that, you know, as long as you can accept everything for what it is, it's okay. I don't want to be like that either.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? Ghost Rider could have been a way better movie. Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer could have been a way better movie. You know, these sorts of things. But even if they were better movies, I wouldn't expect them to change hearts and minds necessarily.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is first of all, what we should.
I thought Hellboy 1 and 2 were great movies. They weren't life-changing experiences.
Yeah. Well, I really liked Hellboy. Number one, can't help it.
Well, sure. You also had a lot more of an investment in that. I never read the comics, but I'm just saying.
I didn't read the comics before watching the movie.
Okay, all right.
But that's the thing is that I think, to some extent, I think that people should let themselves be surprised. So, like when Cloverfield came out, there was such a big, viral marketing thing for Cloverfield, and everybody wanted like, oh, we got to go see Cloverfield. And my response was, I don't know why I should care. Like, it's not. First of all, viral marketing doesn't do a lot for me. I don't care. If it makes me aware of a movie, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should check it out.
I like it when it's clever, and it was kind of clever for that movie, but I completely agree with you. I tell you what, though, I will disagree with you with that movie just in the sense of, no, this isn't even disagreeing, but just what I liked about the viral marketing with that was I enjoyed that it took forever before we knew what the name of that movie was. I really enjoy the idea of we're going to get you hyped about an idea, and we're not even going to tell you what it's called until a few months before it comes out. I really like that idea.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I agree with them, but for me, like, what they were showing us, I didn't care. I'm like, so, I mean, it's a monster movie. There's been monster movies before, and things have gotten torn up before. I'm like, what? I don't know.
Yeah, that one, though, was so much more about the name than it was about what it was about.
Yeah.
You know, because they plastered Abrams all over it. I mean, they made a really big deal out of it. It's Abrams, and people were like, ooh, an Abrams. Because a lot of people were really liking Abrams after Mission Impossible 3, and it was, and Lost, you know. And so it was like, hey, you know, his name's on this. And, well, and you know, other stuff he'd done too, like Alias, I guess. It was his.
Yeah?
I think Alias was his. Sorry if I'm wrong with that. I never watched Alias, but I think that's his. But, well, regardless.
Moving on.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think that people tend to expect too much. I also think that people get in their minds, and like that's sort of my final thought on it, I guess, is that people just get in their heads and want something, and when they don't get it, they're really disappointed. And then they voice outrage, and there's so many different opinions out there that just sort of the common denominator is what gets picked up. Sort of this tyranny of the majority, where they have to say, oh, this is what people want, so this is what we're going to give them in the next movie. And that ultimately ends, catering to an audience only works if you actually have a story that works with that idea. X3 had 2 of them, and then jammed them together and made a crappy movie.
I want to put this into perspective for a little bit for my final thoughts. The first big thing is that I think that a lot of fans get really, really up in arms where they have their definitive version of a character. Mm-hmm. And not only do they, and everybody's entitled to an opinion, certainly. I'll tell you, I have my ideal Batman, and it's not Nolan's, and I still like Nolan's movies. Okay, I'm gonna say that. Now, I'm not saying that if you don't like Nolan's movies, that I have a problem with you. That's fine. Not everybody has to like what I like. I'm simply saying that my ideal is not necessarily what is always good. And so the point I'm trying to make is you may have expectations based on what you really want a character to be, but I like to try to get people to be open-minded enough where they can see the merit in another kind of version, and at the very least, don't expect if you really want a movie to be something, that's okay, but don't expect everybody else who's looking forward to the movie to want it to be what you want. That's not fair. There are a lot of, for most comic book characters, there are different kinds of versions, and we all have a different opinion on what we'd like them to be. Especially Batman, especially Superman, especially Even I would say that's even true of maybe Spider-Man and some characters like that. Now that we've had a lot of years behind us with some of the Marvel characters, there's even multiple versions of those. And so I'm just saying that have your own opinion, but don't expect everybody else to feel the same way you do about it. Also, the other thing is just to put this into perspective, the fact that a movie that you didn't want got made out of a property that you love does not invalidate the source material that you love. So you can always still go back and look at that even if you didn't get the movie you wanted. And I don't like the idea of movies somehow being like more important or better than comic books. That always bothers me because it's a medium I love, and you know I can be as affected by a comic book as I can by a movie. And the other thing is, superheroes are so popular enough that they're constantly being rebooted. So if you didn't get it this time, that doesn't mean you never will.
Yeah, I mean even movies that fail get reboots.
Well, those are generally the ones that do get reboots.
Like we want people like I think I can make this into a cash cow. Let's try it again.
In some other way, and I think that Hollywood is catching on to the fact that there are different ways to do these characters. So Sam Raimi's Spider-Man was not necessarily exactly the kind of Spider-Man I would have liked to have had, though I liked a lot of things about it. It's being rebooted now. What we're seeing in the trailers is something much closer to what I would like in a Spider-Man film. I'm hoping that that's what we get. But my point is, we're already seeing this happen with a lot of properties. We know that there's going to be even another different version of Batman after the Nolan movies. We know that there's plans to do another Daredevil, and there's plans to do more Fantastic Four. So if you didn't get it the first time around, you might get it later on. So I'm just saying that there's no reason not to be hopeful, and I just think that people should make a little bit less of a deal out of it. Has to be my version.
I really wanted a Daredevil that was super dark, and I really wanted a Daredevil that even had religious themes in it. Or at least more religious themes in it.
And it touched on those, but it didn't go far enough. Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that this Daredevil is invalidated. I mean, it's a Daredevil that exists to do what it does, and that's okay. I mean, you don't have to have one person there. You can have many different kinds of characters. So, if you like Nolan's Batman, that doesn't mean that Mark Hamill as the Joker is invalidated because. Oh God!
Heath Ledger did a different kind of thing. Yeah,
you can have more than one. There's more than one in the comic book. So if you have a definitive comic book version, then you should. If you read comic books frequently, you should be more apt to pick up that more than one of these characters can exist at the same time.
And it's not. And even though a lot of the time they won't get it right, it's not fair to expect filmmakers not to explore versions.
Yeah, it's a different medium. They can try something different. And
you have to put yourself in the heads of the people making them and of the actors. They, actors never want to do exactly what's been done before.
Yeah.
Because how else are they supposed to make their mark in the world? And that's part of what being an actor is all about. Is coming up with is doing your own version of something.
Exactly. I was in a play with a young lady at one point who she was my age. I'm not sure why I say young lady. Anyway, that said. I don't want to watch that movie because watching that movie is going to affect my performance. And I said, good point. I don't care. I'm watching the movie. So I'm like, I want to be like John Lithgow.
but that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about this topic? Leave a comment. Let us know. We went a little bit over time, but I think we had quite a bit to say about that. So anyway, leave us comments, and if there's anything you'd like us to talk about in a future video, leave that in the comments as well. Thanks as always for watching. We'll see you again next time on Geeks Not Nerds. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince, reminding you to support your local comic book store.
See you next time.